Okay, so we are in chapter 6, one of the most famous Sunday school lessons of all time, right? The flood. Just about everybody knows about the flood, a flood, Noah's Ark. Hmm? Genesis chapter 6, right? We actually talked about, you might say the flood started actually in chapter 5, the genealogies. And the point was to make a bridge from Adam to get to Noah, right? And I was kind of thinking about, we talked about the Nephilim. We talked about that when man began to multiply in the face of the land and daughters were born to them. It's interesting to me because it does almost look like that's copy and pasted in there. I have a Timothy Alberino. He thinks the opposite of what just about any other scholar would say. They would, if you read the book of Enoch, it's in chapter 6 of the first book of Enoch. And literally these first 4 verses are almost identical in that book. And so most scholars will say, well, he was reading Genesis and he got it from there. But he actually believes, and I think it's interesting, that he thinks that Moses got it from Enoch's original writing and put it, and so that's why there's so little said on it, right? Because Moses knew that the people who he was writing to already knew, and it was written elsewhere. They already knew about this, but anyway, we'll start from there, and it seems that this put in there to me because it helps to explain why the flood. So without it, you just see that God's getting pretty angry at the people. But with the entrance of these 4 verses, which we'll just go through very quickly before we move on, um, it explains that there's a whole lot more going on than on the surface of things, right? It gotten really bad, and all of Mesopotamia, Babylon, Gilgamesh, they all have various flood stories. All cultures talk about a flood. They give different reasons, like the Mesopotamian versions, that there was a bunch of gods, and they didn't. There was work they did not want to do, so they decided they would bring out slave labor, kind of like what we do today, and so these people, us, were created to do the work the gods didn't want to do. And then we started to get noisy because we kept on asking, making requests. We wanted this, we wanted that. So they finally just got fed up with us. They decided they were just going to wipe us all out. So they had a plan. But there was one particular god, Ea. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Ea. He had a soft spot for us people. And so he told one of his favorite humans, and I can't pronounce his name. It starts with the U. So I should have done my homework on that. But he was told the flood was coming and you were going to get wiped out, and so he uh, had to make a boat, much like Noah's. So there's definitely a lot of the same storyline, but clearly the Bible's is different. So it's almost like when you read your Bible, you can understand it as this was not new knowledge for this people, but what was being explained to them is why it happened. No, no, the flood did not come because we people were too noisy and got on the God's nerves. The God, right, Elohim, right, Jehovah Elohim, the earth got so corrupted, it got so bad, we'll read it, that basically God had to restart, cleanse everything. Well, maybe they had a reason to be mad then. I mean, I didn't see it, so I can't confirm. Or well, a makeshift Hollywood version. And a lot of times you'll get there are some different legends out. There's even various accounts of some of the sons of God helping Noah build the ark. Yes, it's true. And so you have a lot of that. He couldn't do it by himself. He had to have a lot of help. Yeah. So anyway, but we'll get started. We'll read. I'll read the verse. How about the verse 8, and then verse 8. Anyway, okay. So when man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention on the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Okay. Kind of straightforward. What's your thoughts? How's it compare with Genesis chapter 1 and 2? Yeah. Yeah. Why? Why everybody's changed? What do you think's happened? What's the problem? Sin. Yeah. So going back to what we were kind of talking about a little bit in there, Monty. Yeah, it's like sin is like it's a power, it's a virus, right? I mean, you know how you look at people and you're like, bro, just choose right. Just choose right. Get your act together. Come on. Start thinking right. Quit being down on yourself. Everything will be better. It never is. You keep teaching people. And it's like, right? It just, because teaching's not enough, right? There's something broken. Something was unleashed. Now, keep in mind now, before Jesus came, sin is like unleashed. Corruption is unleashed, and it's like infecting everything it touches. It's starting down at the heart, right? Or else you'd think by now the world would have figured out. Well, we just got to find that magic thing, whatever it is, to help people realize that, look, you can't kill people all the time. You got to start loving people, right? Something's inherently broken. Verse 4, Nephilim were on the earth in those days. Yeah. And also afterward. Yeah. So, afterward what? Yeah. Interesting, right? So it must have been after you would have to think the flood. But that's not. Yeah, but also afterward. So again, remember, if this was written, in other words, if this was written by Moses, then he'd have been talking to the people just before they're entering the promised land. So he's probably explained to them that's why the Nephilim are still around. In other words, because we know they were, because you remember when they went into the promised land, who did they run into? Giants. Yeah. Yes. And so and the men of renown who were of old. So they're obviously these men, these heroes, and the exploits they did. Obviously, they were the, in other words, Moses, obviously, you know who we're talking about here. All the famous men of lore. Yeah, that's who they were. They were Nephilim. And we bring that up because to all the rest of the cultures, they were the cool guys, the big shots. Kind of like, so it's interesting what Linda brought this up last week. Because that is really what you're watching when you watch Marvel Comics, right? But you're probably watching more of the pagan version. Yeah. Yeah, the X-Men. You're watching it, meaning these are the good guys. Yeah, these are the good guys. Yeah, right. And by the way, it's fascinating. This the fact he comes from an exploded planet, which is there's a lot that background. But see, in other words, it's repackaged. These are the good guys. These are what all the other pagan worlds they all saw these great men as the powerful, right, giant, the demigods. Gilgamesh was 2/3 God, 1/3 man, and all the exploits. And so that's how they were written up and packaged. Kind of like, we package things and we display it. Well, the Bible says, no, that's not what they were. And it was a terrible place, right? It was a terrible place. And so, exactly, Jim. So afterwards, yeah. Um, and then we just see the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So, does God have a heart? Yeah. So not heart like that, the pumping blood, right? In fact, I think that actually, when you see heart in the Old Testament, it was the intestines, the kidneys. Yeah, that was the heart. Yeah, but the interior. But God has a heart too, and He can be grieved. We, yes, yes. In fact, to your point too, if you think about it, maybe we've all had maybe children who haven't done exactly what we've dreamed they would do. Well, that's like an everyday occurrence with the Father. He's had more of his children turn their back on him, spit at him, call him names, refuse to listen to him, than Heinz has pickles, right? Yeah. Um, but so, and it's not that. So we're patterned after God, and He has a heart, and His heart can be grieved. Boy, you wonder, He must be so incredibly strong. How do you continue being so awesome and loving and kind with all the pain? Yeah, yeah. Hmm. And I wonder, was it exactly because was it? Well, because what's interesting here is, okay, we'll talk about Noah in a minute. I don't know what you think, but I think for us, we'd go, well, the expedient thing to do is just blast everybody. I mean, just let's and start all over. But he doesn't. If there's just one, which seems to be telling me that he is every human life, every animal, plant, everything to him is so precious, right? He doesn't, he's not thrilled with exterminating them. We talked about that with Cain last week, right? Yeah, and that's just, you could see he is like bound determined. He is the route and I'm using weak human terms, right? Because obviously God's so far above this, so we're looking as a human, but he 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 is. You talk about committed to the plan. I made Adam and Eve, and we're going this way. It's almost like God obviously knew, you know, this is going to be a long. To him, it's not long. To us, a long, drawn out, heartbreaking at times plan. It, okay. Um, why do you think he has to take out the animals? What did they do? In other words, so he's going to have to he's going to recreate. So okay, so why the on this again? We're more having to maybe think through on this because it doesn't tell us. But man's the one who's lost his mind, the way we see it. So why water? Why the flood? Why the land? Why they keep? Why that connect the land? Why the animals? Nice. Yeah, yeah. 1 Corinthians 15. Yeah. 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 So it's like it's yeah. So we see things as sins being, that be things that we do, wrong things that we do, and we kind of see it like a bunch of all individuals, and we're all, doing stuff that's wrong, and you get a lot of it, and it's everywhere. But this kind of sees sin more as like it's that, but there's more. It's like this corruption, and it's permeating everything, and the connection between the land and us also gets affected. In fact, remember in Romans, Paul talks about that all of creation was subjected to futility, right? In the hopes that it'd be liberated from its bondage of decay into the glorious freedom of the children of God. So it's like, we talk about how, we're at the place now, and it's really sad, where growing number of people who think that, just nuke all the people and keep all the dogs and animals, right? We're messing anything up, just the animals. But clearly in the Bible, and there is some truth to that sometimes, but the Bible talks that this creation cannot come back to its former and then future glory until the sons of God, being us now, are the children of God, are brought back into their proper glory. We're connected. And so when in other words, so if you look at the opposite way, it seems like all the sin and corruption, it corrupts the land, corrupts the animal, corrupts everything. We're kind of connected, I guess. Yeah. 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 Well, if it had a reputation to do it, and you, as the owner, didn't do anything about it, you got stoned. But that's if an animal did it. But in this case, the animal has it per se. Though, though, if you start delving into some of the other Second Temple literature, like the Book of Jasher, it'll make mention that not only was the sons of God having relations with women, but you had the animals, and you had all kinds. Remember, we talked about all kinds of strange. So who knows how bad it went? But in any case, even still, we remember Israel. Do you remember why God booted Israel out of the land finally? Remember, kicked them out of the southern kingdom, was kicked out of the land because they. But what was it that God he 40 years for? I think it was every 7 years you're supposed to let the land lay fallow, right? Sabbath, and they didn't do it. So there's that connection between land and God loves land. God loves his creation, and we're to be stewards of it.
You got a great point because Abraham,
Yes,
the promised land.
the promised land. Is that amazing? Yeah. He's gonna boot the people out who are disrespecting his land, and he's gonna bring Abraham's descendants into it, warning them, "You're just tenants here. If you do what they did, I'll boot you out too." Yeah, it's really amazing, right? Amazing. In fact, interestingly, and that we get into that Abraham because he's given the land. We're kind of going a little bit far afield. We'll get to it. But in Romans 5, I think it is, it talks about Abraham receiving the world. He was supposed to get everything. And so that's God's envision is for us. You see, we're now of the seed of Abraham. That's why it's so important, right? So again, trying to keep where we are. We're reading way back in the early parts of the story. We're learning about, wow, why is this world the way it is? But we're way ahead now. We're actually after the Messiah, Jesus. And I can't wait to start getting into that. Like questions like, what did Jesus do when he was crucified, resurrected, and ascended? What happened? Are there any changes in the physical? Are there any changes in our environment? Of course, there are to us. Well, what changes? What was Jesus thinking he would accomplish? Right? And we're going to get into all that. But right now, we're at God's got to basically start everything over. Now, let me ask you about Noah. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. So I guess that means that we can't quite see sin as being like a contaminant. Like, for instance, if I've sinned, if I'm in sin, I can't go and touch money and then suddenly he has it because somehow Noah remained pure.
He kept his door closed to sin.
Yeah, right. He kept this door. Yeah, he didn't let that when the devil came knocking. He says, "No, go away."
I'm done.
Yeah. In fact, it says, but yeah, Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. I think the only other time this is said of is maybe Moses, but um, isn't that kind of cool? I mean, we're getting down to the bare minimum here, Noah. Right. Okay, we'll read a little more about him. Verse 9, these are the generations of Noah. There's that told dolt again. See, right? Remember in chapter 5, this is the book of the generations of Adam. Here we go. Another set. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God, and Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay? Wait a minute. Noah was a righteous man. No good, respecting Baptist is going to say anyone's righteous, but here it is. Blameless in his generation? Noah walked with God. Who else walked with God? Elijah. And think earlier. Who was like the Enoch? But I think like here's what's okay. So wait a minute though. So all right. So and yeah, and there we go again with like no. Okay, a couple of things. I'm glad you brought that up too because we'll talk about like I think in our Sunday school. I got so many classes going. I can't remember. But Noah was not looking at God face to face, certainly in the way that Adam and Eve were, and yet it was still perfectly possible for Noah to walk with God. I'd like to know how he did that. And two, remember we talked about excuses. You make excuses. Go for it.
I want to talk about Moses. He is something different with Moses.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
God was around Moses glowed.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
Yes.
Why do we say that Noah didn't talk to God like that?
Well, let me get what one other thing too. But remember, like with God, when it was Miriam, I think Miriam was kind of was jealous. Maybe she was getting after him for his Cushite wife that he had, right? But basically we all could talk to. Who are you, Moses? And God basically gave her leprosy and said, let's get this straight. When I talk to a prophet, I tell him in dreams and visions, right? Not so with Moses. I talk to him face to face as a man does with his friend. You should have been afraid. Then she got leprosy. You should have been scared. Let me help you out here. She got leprosy. All right, but I'm laughing about it. That's terrible. I mean, look, 7 days. Yeah, yeah. Well, because I take it as that now that once Adam and Eve sinned, the relationship, in other words, of God being right there. But yet, I guess what I'm getting at though is that you could still walk with God, right? Because God was with him through his spirit. My spirit will not, right, will not strive with man forever. In other words, he's taken my spirit has to leave. He's not doing it because look, I'm just tired of you. But it's like my spirit will blow you all up. You'll be death by holiness. I can no longer, I can no longer hang with you. That's the point of the later with the tabernacle and the sacrifices and the maintenance of the covenant. It was to purify everything so that God can remain with them, right? Or else it was bad news, right, for them. And so, but what we see here is that Noah, remember, go back to excuses, remember, Noah basically, if we want to cry and complain, you don't know how hard it is in this world to live for Jesus. We got movies that are terrible, social media. And Noah's like, I had giants, I had cannibals. It was a bad time, but I walked with God, right? Now, do you think it says here, let me ask you this. So it says here in chapter 6, verse 9, that he was blameless in his generation. What do you think that means? But we don't want to say he was perfect, do we?
No.
And the way we would say perfect. Yeah.
He was like Job.
Upright and blameless. Yeah. Yeah.
Mine says Noah was a just man, perfect in his generation.
Yeah. See, that idea of perfect, because there are some who will take that perfect because it can be used as far as perfect, as far as like, for lack of a better word, genealogy. In other words, there's some you'll say was inferring that Noah had the pure bloodline. He wasn't mixing up with all that other cross. I'm not saying it's exactly, but they will say that word is often that use it perfect. So anyway, but definitely, the Bible is telling us pretty clear that unlike Everyone else, Noah was,
Who's as perfect as you could be for that time?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
He made his choice for God.
yeah,
I imagine he saw a lot of stuff. I imagine
Oh yeah.
it was just as bad, if not worse, as far as like sexual
yeah,
Like a Solomon and Gomorrah kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the whole world was
yeah, yeah,
But but you but Pat talked about Job a little bit. You remember the conversation between the devil and God was the devil said, "You put a hedge around
yeah.
Job." Well, didn't God put a hedge kind of around Noah? You see what I'm saying?
Um,
Why
what would the
did
hedge be?
well the hedge in Job was protection.
Yeah,
The devil act like I can't touch this
yeah,
guy,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
To him, but physically not. Right, right. But he gave him permission. But before he couldn't even mess with him,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So why did Job get that? And then I could see Noah maybe the same kind of way.
Well, Noah had to, and it'd be the same with us, right? In that Noah made a decision that he was going to walk with God. He was going to draw his strength from him. He was going to, in other words, he wanted to be with him. And so therefore it's like what the psalmist says, I take refuge in you, God. I take refuge. God protects us and protected him.
So Job was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
He took so you get a protection out of that.
Yeah, and I'm saying, yeah, right. But if you leave that, so in other words, Noah could have left it. We could leave the refuge and go off and do our own thing. Well, then God, out of his graciousness, will still, well,
Well, look at
you,
Solomon.
yeah,
David, he loved, and
yes,
Solomon
yeah,
got a lot of, and a lot of people was protected because it was in line of David.
yeah. That's right. No, no, no. Job, okay, Job. Maybe I think Satan was also cute because Job had everything going for him. He was very wealthy. He had awesome children, awesome family, and God was blessing him. And so Satan was basically saying, you know what? If you just took all that stuff away from him, when we talked about, particularly your friend of yours or one of your relatives who lost their son, take away, and you'll suddenly get a different Job.
I
And
thought God went to the devil, not the devil went
the
to
devil
God.
went to God first and
Oh, okay.
asked
Okay.
him,
I thought the
asked
story
for
where he
permission. Yeah,
roaming around.
yeah. But now, okay, but that's on the other hand, Noah clearly, remember we read in chapter 5, you had the genealogy. Yeah,
out of the ground that the Lord has cursed. This one
yeah.
will bring us relief from our work and from the painful toil of our hands.
So there was this kind of prophetic idea going down. God is going to send someone, sound familiar? To help us, to save us, right? Remember, because the curse in chapter 3 was the seed of the woman will be at war with the seed of the dark one, the dark lord. I've got Star Wars in my mind. I saw a picture. Somebody showed a picture of a very detailed picture of Pluto, right? That planet Pluto. Well, I don't think it's a planet anymore. They don't call it a planet anymore. And well, it was the Death Star. I'm just kidding. It wasn't. That's what they had a picture of it. Anyway, but okay. So take a left hand turn there. But anyway, okay. But anyway, so the prophetic word was going down. I'm sure Noah's father, right? They knew that Noah was to be the one. But Noah, well, he took the prophetic word seriously, right? And he stayed true to the Lord. And that's how I like to look at it. Then we think, what does it mean to be perfect? And so we'll say, oh, well, you do all the good things, don't do none of the bad things. And I think that's a result. If you just choose to stay focused on God, in other words, you draw close to Him, you're going to find your desires
If you
changing.
look at James, where it talks about all the things that you learn to do, you learn to be patient,
Yeah.
and you become perfect and complete,
Yes.
lacking nothing.
Yes.
So apparently that is what
Yeah.
Noah had
Yeah.
done.
Yep. And he was solid, and he did pretty good at keeping his family in the same direction. But okay. Now, yeah, you got Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits. I think it's like, what, 450 feet? Its breadth, 50 cubits. That'd be what, 75? Is that right? And its height would be 30 cubits. What would that be, 50? 45? Make a roof for the ark, and finish it to a cubit above, and set the door of the ark in its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. For behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life under heaven. Everything that is on the earth shall die, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female, of the birds according to their kinds, and of the animals according to their kinds, of every creeping thing of the ground according to its kind. 2 of every sort shall come into you to keep them alive. Also take with you every sort of food that is eaten, and store it up. It shall serve as food for you and for them. Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. So God cares for the animals. You make sure that and so no, or you could say that Noah's righteousness also preserved the animals, right? But he is going to start over. Going to start over. I will establish my covenant with you. I'm always struck by that. God is not quitting on the human race, nor his creation, right? He's going to start over. Then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate, and 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens also, male and female, to keep their offspring alive on the face of all the earth. For in 7 days I will send rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And every living thing that I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground. And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. So we got that refrain, right? The Lord did all that commanded him. Got the 40, big number in Scripture, right? Where else do we hear 40 days, 40 nights? So, and the temptation, excellent. Yeah, 40 days.
40 years.
Yeah, it's a long time, huh? Mm-hmm.
They didn't have GPS, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Or they would have said, wait a minute, God, we were just here a week ago.
Mm-hmm. Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters came upon the earth. So I guess he was no youngster, right, Jim? You know what's interesting though is I remember hearing from Jordan Peterson. I think I brought this up. Now, Jordan Peterson, I would not. He does not seem like he's a Christian to me, but he is like we'll just say he's sympathetic to the things of God. And so it's interesting. I like what I like about listening to people like him is they'll come at the Bible from a way that I wouldn't think of, right? And one of the things he kind of brought up, he had this. It was really kind of really cool. It was going through Exodus, and he had like 10 of maybe some of the brightest, most brilliant Bible scholars from different faiths, a few Orthodox, a few some Protestant. Os Guinness was there, and kind of discuss and helping him to understand it. And one of the things that Jordan Peterson brought up, he talk about Moses and Abraham. See, but God is really likes middle-aged, adventurous men, right? Because it was, I mean, because look, it was Abraham was 75, Moses, and I mean, okay, 600 years old. Remember, 900, so he's kind of middle-aged. And look, you got to be a little adventurous, man, to build yourself an ark and to get out there. And there's a something to hey, right about where we are. If you want to go on, I came out to Tennessee for an adventure. Just Lord, I want to go where you want to go. Go to Alabama. Just he'll take you on an adventure, and it just seems like that. He wants that. In other words, he wants someone who's willing to risk it all for him. Riverboat gambler for Jesus. But anyway, okay, so 600 years, but that basically 900. DGen. Yeah, now we call him a DGen.
You know what? I want to throw this out at you. Is this the art? This miracle, but
I didn't get that. Riverboat gambler, and he's in an ark in a boat. I wasn't connecting that. Oh, sorry, Monty. I just okay.
is that a miracle that lots of people don't think about? Is God had to have influence to get all those animals
Yes.
to the ark,
Yes.
and I think they just showed up.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think. I mean, okay. Exactly. I think exactly that. I mean, in some ways, we can kind of see. Animals have homing devices, and that they know.
Oh yeah.
And I think that God heightened their senses up, and they're like, "See that guy over there? He's the man. Get to
I
him."
want to start hanging around here.
Yeah. Yes, I think so, Monty. Yeah. And I don't think and I also could see the animals, God putting them into hibernating mode when they got into the boat, when the flood came. And, I think, again, how animals are amazing. They put, right, they'll shut down whatever it takes to live. But I think that probably happened. So they didn't have to have a ton of food. So,
Hey,
yes.
on a side note, I'm looking forward to the trip. I mean,
Yeah. Now I can see it.
Get you
392 miles. 531 was what I said.
Yeah.
That's how much I owe Home Depot.
Well, I was going to say, I go, either you got the. Yeah.
531 miles away. And so then when I looked at my notes, I go, no, it isn't. It's 392 miles. 531 is what I owe Home Depot.
Okay. All right.
So that's why it's 6 hours.
Yes. I was thinking when I was driving to work, I go, either mom got the hours wrong or she got the mileage wrong. Yeah.
But they do say to go when it's cooler weather because there's no shade and it's not air conditioned. It's cool, but it's not air
I think it'd
conditioned.
be a great fall trip.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you see all the great trees changing on the lake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't the Creation Museum not like hardly far from the? I don't know what that is though. Part of it, and it is if you're not biblical and you want some detailed account of how it came to be. They say there are some people who, well, I don't, that's not quite scriptural, And I thought, well, I don't know that we would need to go to the creation, but it would be neat to go to the ark. $64.99 for all you youngsters. For Jim and I, it's $10 cheaper because we're old.
Well, wait a minute. Are you older than Noah?
Almost.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't remember. I just remember that Jim and I are so old that we all.
Like I say, yeah, 65 is getting close.
If you're getting AARP letter in the mail, does that something we're getting?
Oh, yeah. And yeah, I did. They have scooters actually that you can rent.
Yeah,
So,
that's
cool.
That scooter sounds real good.
Mhm.
They do have a buffet dinner there.
Oh, they do?
They say it's not cheap because you're not allowed. You can bring in bottles of water.
Right,
That's the
yeah,
only thing
yeah.
you can bring.
Hmm.
You cannot bring any.
Which I can understand.
Yeah, I can too. So I thought, yeah, it would be kind of a neat trip. In the fall. Yeah.
Okay, well we can always bring up the 600-year thing. The Noah was 600 years old, verse 6, when the flood waters came upon the earth, and Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him went into the ark to escape the waters of the flood, of clean animals and of animals that are not clean, and of birds and of everything that creeps on the ground. Verse 9. Two and two, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days, and there's that idea of seven, right? The waters of the flood came upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were open. So, see, picture, I think, for the ancients, land floated on the water. Remember, the water was first, and then land was kind of gathered. And so it's kind of going back to uncreation, right? Water's coming up from the ground. I saw that the Ring of Power. I was watching the show when they whatever one of those the minions for the Dark Lord. What's his name? I can't think of the name of the. But he turned the key, and it just made this giant flood, and water coming from underneath, busting up out of the ground, and then water coming from above. Same kind of idea. No. Yeah. I think that, if you get into some Second Temple literature, there's more about her in that. But yeah, nothing here. Yeah. And rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Verse 13. On the very same day, Noah and his sons, Shem and Ham and Japheth and Noah's wife, that's it. And the three wise, and not the wise of the sons, neither, with them entered the ark. They and every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kinds, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, two and two of all flesh, in which there was the breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. So who's going to shut the door?
Lord.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, salvation's in the ark.
So when Lord shut the door, that kept the world.
Yes.
He sealed. He sealed it.
Sealed it. Pretty
That's
cool.
beautiful.
Yeah. And 1 Peter 3:18, they use the flood, right? He uses the flood and compares it with baptism. Interesting. Huh.
So would you say when
That was Paul, excuse me, to the Philippian jailer. But you're on a roll. Keep going. What about it?
I'm just wondering, him and his household, is there, is he saying your household has the same chance as you, or is he saying that, like, kind of like Noah, his family kind of got in on his, seems to me, got in on what God was doing with him. So was the Philippian jailer told him that? Was he saying your family is going to be saved because you're saved, or what?
Well, first thing I would say is we probably say it the other way around. So that's how we see it. When we're a very individualistic society. I think. See, they didn't think of it that way at all. So I think, and that was interesting. I think what Noah did, his family did. And so they were one and together. So it's kind of the same idea. And so what the father decided, they kind of all decided together. And so that is how I would take it. That is kind of interesting, huh?
So
I
the
do,
Philippian jailer says, I've decided we're going
and I do think too. Yeah, but I do think you're right. I think that you know what the head of the household, what he decides, or I guess it would be a single mother. There's a certain power there that, right, the parents have an influence, have a spiritual influence, right? Remember, Paul talked about that. Uh, you know, let's just say let's just say the wife became a Christian, but the husband didn't want to be. Well, and she's wondering, what do I do now? Do I divorce my husband? No, because you're sanctifying, right, him and the children. So, yeah. It,
Joshua, as for me and my
yeah,
house,
yeah,
worship the Lord.
yeah,
He's speaking for his
yeah.
as the head of the house. But do you really believe that somebody else is going to be saved because this
Well, I said sanctified, but the Bible says it.
What does that mean? I'm always kind of confused about what does sanctification mean. As in saved, or they're making them from bad people to good people just because of what does that mean in English?
That's a really good question. Um, it seems that there's some sort of protection, and I think that goes both ways. Like I think the opposite way. Like people who, let's just say, you have children who have lived in a family who love Jesus, and then the children decide to break away from that. I think it's worse for them because they had more light than those who were raised in a household that Jesus wasn't mentioned, right? Well, here, and maybe I'm using the wrong word. We'll just take it straight from the mouth of Paul, so I can't be accused of putting words in Paul's mouth. Because when I get up there and we're together, I don't want him pulling me off to the side saying, "Bro, I said nothing of that." What Bible are you reading? A Mormon Bible? Oh no. Anyway, let me see if I. Yeah. Anyway, let me Uh, okay. Okay, here we go. Verse 12 of chapter 7 of 1 Corinthians. To the rest I say, I, not the Lord, that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. And remember, the idea would be so suddenly these people, all of a sudden, like one decides they're going to follow Jesus, right? The other one doesn't. Right? And Paul saying, no, you don't divorce. And then he says, okay. And then if any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband. Otherwise, your children would be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. But if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? So he doesn't think they're saved, but the idea they're holy. They're you might say, and this goes to a lot of different ways. They're now in holy ground. So basically, you as a believer, all of us, we make the area and the ground we walk on as holy. Right? Or in some way it becomes holy, sanctified. The church is sanctified and holy because God's people are in it, which really should make us shape up a little bit, right? And now we get back to the Lord's table and everything. Hey, don't be trifling around with this. This is serious business, right?
All right, so God sees that bond, that marriage of that.
Yes.
So the Christian, kind of like if the Christian gets an umbrella and the unchristian gets to be underneath that protection a little bit because you're
I think
married to
so.
a Christian.
I think
And
so.
you get this protection maybe out of the relationship, and that guy, lady or man, gets a bonus because of.
Because we look at everything even when we look at a church, we'll see it as a collection of individuals. But that's not how they looked at it. It was a body, one body. See, it was a family unit. It's just one. See, we have such a hard time seeing it that way because we're so individualistic. And so, in that one sense, that's why you always see it's interesting. Like the family sticks together more. Now, it doesn't mean that each person will have to choose for themselves, but there's a certain uh, bond, connection. That's why you and your household will be saved. The invitation is extended to the whole group because you're all like,
Husband is saved, and his wife chooses not to follow Jesus. She is not saved because he is.
right.
And that's
But she does get some benefit out of a Christian.
He said holy. Wow.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So how? Yeah. So what? Yeah. And exactly what that is. So sanctified, set apart. Which is what holy is: set apart, sanctified, holy. So it's almost so in that case, it's almost like the believing, spouse. Uh, and so, but okay, but that wouldn't necessarily be. It's almost as if Paul is referring to because if in fact that when you're married, you become one flesh. See, it's like one of your that decision that one spouse made, you kind of brought into that covenant. Because what I was thinking was, for my first thought was, okay, so does that mean that somebody who's a believer and is holy can like touch somebody else? Well, not necessarily, because he's speaking to a family unit, right? But then, so then Paul must see the family unit as something special. I'm kind of with you all. I'm trying to think it through. How is Paul looking at that? To say that clearly he looked at relationships different than we do.
But I could see a husband saying, okay, my wife is not a believer, I'm divorcing her. No, don't do that.
Well, actually, he could.
Done, though. I mean, he says it can be done.
Yeah, he could. He could say, I'm out of here.
I'm out of here. But does that give him a right where he has to stay divorced, or does he get a right to remarry?
He could. I mean, well, if he chooses not to follow Jesus, then I guess he'll do whatever he thinks.
No, I'm talking about
Oh,
the Christian leaves the non-Christian.
well, the Christian can't lead the non-Christian. He's to stay. It's the non-Christian's allowed to leave. So okay, so here let me okay. It says if any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever, and he, the unbeliever, consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband, but if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so.
So can the Christian?
Yeah. In such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. God has called you to peace. For how do you know whether you will save your husband? Let me see.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I think that would be my.
Well, the way I kind of look at it, if the spouse leaves, that spouse is more likely to commit adultery, even
Yeah.
if they got.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Sooner or later,
Yeah.
commit. So I think the freedom will for sure.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Is adultery.
You can't have a relationship with somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's saying that they'll go.
And by the way, notice that
Have a relationship
Paul
with
said that this is not what the Lord says, this is what I say, meaning, so he was like adding a situation in. In other words, he was giving counsel from the Lord himself. The Lord hadn't talked about, what about this part here? What about this person? And he's saying, this is how we should do it. Interesting, huh? There's a whole lot. The only thing, I guess, what ties to what we're talking with Noah, it's interesting that Noah, I mean, we will say things like Noah and his family, they also must have been pretty strong. They went with dad. But of course, in our context, that would be, that's kind of, right? But I think for a household back then, it was they thought of it different. They thought of it's kind of like what's interesting to me. For instance, we're going a little far afield, but it's like, how did you become part of a tribe, or like you practice the customs and you practice various rituals and customs, and when you did the things like, remember how Ruth became, your God will become my God, your people become my. See, she basically took on the yoke of the customs of the people, and she became. So they didn't look at bloodline like that. They didn't have the DNA. They went by things like this, but this made you a part of the family. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yep. But anyway, I don't know how we got so much on that. Well, we may have figured that, but right now we just got. Well, we don't. Yeah, it didn't say that. No. Yeah. No. Well, if we discuss.
His son had kids, not him.
Yeah.
Did we talk about it was a possibility?
Yeah, we were kind of. Remember, us talking about a possibility, what the Bible says, are two different things.
Oh, absolutely.
Dog is huge.
He's getting a little braver. Oh. And you got to see this. Okay, he's 9 months old, right? And he is like, he's getting more rambunctious. Yeah. You got to see, he goes wherever Linda goes, but he kind of like half takes her out. She's always looking behind her because he's come running up. Hey! Yeah. Oh, he's getting bigger all the time too. I don't think he's done yet. Yeah.
He's just a puppy at heart.
Okay, so where are we at here? We're in chapter. Chapter 7, verse. There we go. The flood continued 40 days on the earth. The water increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. So you would point to that if you believing this is like a universal flood, right? If you want to remember, the people back in this time, the world to them was limited, right? So they would have just known that was all Mesopotamia. They didn't know nothing about anything. They didn't know what else was up, right? But this would give an indication that it would have been universal. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. And all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land, in whose nostrils was the breath of life, died. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark. And the water prevailed on the earth 150 days or 5 months.
Yet it said the Nephilim were before and after.
Yeah, yeah,
Even though it says every living
yeah.
thing, so it's a little difficult to understand.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Some say that it could have happened again. If they came down. It could have happened twice.
Or possibly that even Noah's son's wife
Yes.
had.
or the flood. You know, sometimes the Bible will use language like this, but the flood was not universal. It was a gigantic flood that flooded the whole. Not saying that. So you're left with a couple of, and the Bible is not worried about it.
Right.
And notice how they don't spend any time in Numbers explaining. Wait a minute, I thought these guys were all taking out the flood. How come they're still here? So it's something that we trip over, but they're not.
Well, the same way as how did Cain find a wife? He just did. There were other.
Yeah.
We don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
And we're the kind. No, you have to give us all the answers. No, I
He
don't.
could have married his sister.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you remember how the Lord's talked about when He first created the earth, the water came from the ground up.
Yes.
Right. So when the flood happened, was these people here the first time to see rain? Is that the first time it started raining?
That would be the indication. First time.
Can you imagine being out there? What is this?
Yes.
They mocked and made fun of him.
What is
Sure
going
did.
Well,
Crazy.
Yeah, and then all those people that were there, oh my goodness.
Well, you figure that the rain and then the water. I mean, it must have been because okay for 150 days and to give that much water. So lately, some of the theories, you have this. I don't know if you heard of what is it called, the Younger Dryas. It had been like 10,000 years ago, or is it 15? I can't. Where you had, and then again, these geologists, scientists are just educated guesses, but maybe like a meteor or a comet or something hit some ice sheets, hit somewhere up north, and that would have just melted that water and brought this. It's interesting, because there's a lot of talk on the idea of cataclysms. Right. In fact, lately has been the talk. So we were raised in, I think it's called uniformitarianism, right? And that's the idea that there are no cataclysms. That's why there is no flood, because everything that we see from the Grand Canyon, everything else, just happened over millions upon millions upon millions of years. Drip, 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 drip. Everything you could see now happened way back then, and this is what we have. And well, now the younger generation is growing up and going bullarchy. And the thing is once these geologists, scientists, once they get a theory and they write books on it, they like gatekeepers, and they'll just refuse to change because you got books. But now they're just finding too much evidence. No, there's been periodic cataclysms. In fact, some are beginning to wonder if there's not like clockwork. Every so often, every so thousands of years, there's another cataclysm. So if you get on YouTube, you hear this chatter about the pole shift and magnetic pole shift, and we're due for one. We're due for another cataclysm. But anyway, that And so the flood would have been one of those. In other words, I'm just throwing this stuff out to you.
Yes, because some people find bones of sea creatures where they shouldn't be.
Yes.
Or not even, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of evidence of the flood.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Something that hit very fast. That's the thing, right? Something that came on us very fast on them. But we read that, so that's pretty fast, man. We're not even talking about the rain that we're talking, well, water came from ground because to fill up as much water as it's talking, that's only 100, that is moving.
Hey, we have evidence here of the flood. Hear me out. This is weird. How I know this is because I used to go to Tunica and work on the casinos machines. They had printers just like
Right,
you
right.
have. And so I went down there. There is a flatland, but you come out of Mississippi, out of DeSoto County, and it just like rough, and then it just goes down, and for 30 miles, just
Okay.
as far as you can tell, there was a monster
Massive
river,
water. Huh.
monster water.
Interesting.
It was just a flood. You could tell at one time this area was the
Hmm.
Mississippi that was 30 miles wide.
Hmm. Well, I mean, they say things like, and again, I can't verify, but they'll say that at one time, all the United States was covered with the redwoods. Those giant redwood trees, yeah, all throughout. Now only along the California coast, right? That would mean then that for that to be the case, that all of the United States must have been that kind of a weather, which is kind of there on the coast. There's kind of the same 65, 70, very very controlled, beautiful. Redwoods are just absolutely beautiful, but you know, but but anyway, yeah, there's
Salt Lake of Utah.
yeah,
Saltwater get up there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few. I think Randy Carlson's one. Now Randy, I don't think he's a geologist who, like a Graham Hancock. You ever heard of Graham Hancock? Graham Hancock. Graham Hancock is definitely believes in like the Atlantis, believed in the in the floods, and definitely not, I would say, Christian, spiritual, pagan side, taking lots of ayahuasca actually. But it's fascinating. Except him, and I think Carlson's another name. He's an what do you call it, geologist, but yeah, he's another one who something's happening.
Yeah, it's low battery mode. Gotta have it charging. It's still recording though.
He talks like a lot of the evidence, even like in up in Minnesota area where he goes to, where you can see definitely a lot of cataclysmic events, and pretty fascinating to me. I really, you heard me bring up the idea of Atlantis because the Atlantis and these various other, I can't think of all of the names of, but they all go back to this ancient advanced civilization. I think that's the big idea. And we have lots of evidence of this advanced civilization, including some of those huge monoliths that they have. And again, believing in a flood, these monoliths seem to be before the flood, which would mean they withstood it. And then it makes you wonder, because whoever built these gigantic rock monoliths and the way they put the rocks together, where you can't even put a piece of paper between them, they had something to make the gigantic mass of stones. Yes, did they know that something was coming? And that's another fascinating. There's a whole lot in there. Yes, yes. And there in down in South America, there's quite a few Of course, another one with the Machu Picchu, right? But then they have, I can't think of the names are so long. Tiahuasco. Yeah, it's just some incredible stuff. But anyway, that it's so murky because, but we're talking ancient civilizations. But anyway, okay, we're in the middle of the flood, right? Should we just stop there? Okay, so we'll catch chapter 8, chapter 9. We'll end up with, then the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. The 150 days of kind of like Rossville, Tennessee, on its worst day times 10. Just flooding. Could
Of course, it had to be a certain length of time, because I thought, okay, so it flooded, and then the waters just receded. Those giants were able to build themselves a little raft, and they were able to survive for a week. But not 150 days. What did you drink? What did you eat?
fish.
Fish, yes.
Eat
Well,
fish.
like Sheldon, my Christian woman says, Sheldon says, what did the lions eat in the house?
Mm-hmm.
All the golden bodies.
Who?
Some of them probably
No.
died. She had fresh
Mm.
Sheldon said, yes, he doesn't believe his mother was a Christian.
Mm.
He doesn't believe it.
Mm.
And he said, we took all the bodies. All these things are saved on the ark. What did the lions eat? Oh, honey, all the golden bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
You know what I always found fascinating, not exactly about the flood, but where it talks about and the creepy things. God created all things and the creeping things.
Yeah.
And he never names what those are, but he just adds them in.
Yeah.
They're the bugs and all that.
They're just the creeping things, okay? We don't got a real name for them, but yeah. What does your Bible say instead of creeping things? What does it say in place of it? And some of it is kind of like you are somewhat guessing what it is, right? Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of I remember when we first were at the Church of Christ when Milt was there, and Milt was saying, "Yeah, I like my version because it says the creepy things, the creepy things instead of, we had like these watered down. They kind of give a name for it. I like the kind of the almost like the mystery. Okay, yeah, it's kind of creepy.
That creeps on creeping things that creeps on the earth.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
There's all creatures that swarm over the earth.
Yeah. And I imagine they had stuff then that's long since died off, become extinct.
Yes.
Yeah.
It seems to me like the ark was really not that huge to have. Like, when I look at all the different varieties of animals that we have now, how that could have ever, especially if there were 7 of the queen ones, how they could have held so many different kinds of animals.
Well, when you go see that ark, it'd be bigger than you think. And I know they will up there. They will talk about when you look at I forget how many box cars that Noah's Ark, how big it is, and they'll talk about how you can. That was the whole point to show how. Remember, it's 3 decks. Yeah. Yeah. But factor in how high, it's amazing to me. To give a different way, this is kind of a humbling way, but when you pour concrete, right, you want to make sure your depth is right. Because it's like, because if you're off by a half inch or an inch, if you're like an inch too deep, it takes a lot more concrete than you would ever think. Same idea. We always see this way, but it's the height that really will. But no, those are all you would think. But I know. I remember I had I had their study Bible, and Dr. Henry Morris is kind of going through, and he was showing how, oh yeah, I could easily accommodate